I was one of the many who was skeptical about this Spider-Man game, albeit for non-puddle related reasons. Insomniac hadn't put out a game I've enjoyed since Resistance 3, which came out in 2011, and the last Spider-Man game I played was Spider-Man 2. Not that one. That's better. So yeah, obviously I'm not the biggest Spider-Man fan, and I didn't have the highest hopes for the developer either, but those doubts were quickly dispelled once I started playing. Spider-Man for the PS4 takes place well into Peter Parker's superhero career. He's graduated college and is a seasoned crime-fighting veteran by now. The tutorial drives this point home as you take down Kingpin and save evidence to build a criminal case against him so he can be taken to the Slammer, as opposed to a Denny's Grand Slamwich.
What'd you call me? What did you just call me?
I called you fat fuck, and we had better leave it at that.
Bad jokes aside, this game has arguably one of the best superhero stories I've ever experienced in either game or movie. But then again, this is coming from a normie's point of view who hasn't touched the comics. Not going the typical Origins route really paid off. On paper, most of the story follows Spider-Man tracking down and stopping Mr. Negative, but the plot is a lot more layered because of the power vacuum caused by Kingpin's arrest. There are many plot points interwoven with one another throughout the story that come together wonderfully by the end. Although the story wouldn't be nearly as good if the characters weren't as compelling and believable as they are. Spider-Man's main villains shine quite a lot by following the idea that the road to hell is often paved with good intentions. Spider-Man isn't flawless and his antagonists aren't pure evil, which makes them feel very human amidst all the superpowered drama and action, which is absolutely necessary for a superhero story. Spider-Man has a difficulty balancing his superhero duties with real life, and his character reflects that. He experiences doubt, and him shouldering the weight of the world and his personal life negatively impacts his relationships. If anything, it definitely makes him more relatable. Like, yeah, sure, he can take out a bunch of supervillains, but I bet he can't pay his student loans on time. Hashtag millennial superhero problems. The voice acting is also well done once you're able to stop yourself from hearing Persona 4's Yosuke every time behind the mask.
My bladder's gonna explode! I gotta let it out before I piss my pants!
Every character has been updated to fit the whole modern setting thing, but my favorite has to be J. Jonah Jameson, who is hilarious. He's a parody of sensational broadcast media, kinda like InfoWars, and finds ways to blame Spider-Man for literally everything. I can't help but laugh, and it honestly reminds me of Ratchet Deadlock's cutscenes. Say what you will about that game, but those were honestly pretty funny. If I have any complaints, it would be the lead up before the big climax and how it feels a little abrupt. You know that big E3 reveal of all Spider-Man's past villains teaming up against him? Yeah, that happens like 70% through the game, so taking them out feels a little rushed and anticlimactic, except for the final two. While I have very little to complain about for the story, the gameplay on the other hand is fun for the most part, but only does its two main focuses outstandingly well, which is good, but it feels like there's a whole bunch of bullshit that bogs down the overall experience. But first, the good. The combat is a more aggressive spin on the Batman Arkham games, thanks to Spider-Man's lack of a counterattack. Only being able to dodge keeps you from getting too patient and just waiting for an opening to do damage. It's a great balance that keeps you on the offensive, while getting too greedy will get you wrecked in the middle of a combo, especially if you're surrounded. Therefore, you're obviously gonna have to be on your toes, so the gameplay matches the frantic, agile fighting style of Spider-Man quite well. Spider-Man can also do a lot more aerial combat, closing the distance with his webs, using webs to tie down grounded enemies, the list goes on. There are also the suit powers, which are basically your trump card in case things get really hairy, and they all kick ass. Best part is, you can use them with any suit as you unlock them. It's so much more than just mashing square, and the different types of enemies keep you experimenting. This game has essentially mastered the art of fighting mobs. Traversing New York is also exhilarating. Building up momentum through web swinging feels natural, but since the webs are attached to the actual objects in the city, it's not something you can just turn your brain off for. I mean, you can just hold R2 if you're lazy, but if you're impatient like me, there are more things you can do to go as fast as possible. Timing your next swing is the most obvious way to build up speed, but there's also the zipline abilities that allow you to keep up the pace even when you're on the rooftops. It's simple, but still really engaging. Speeding through New York and weaving through buildings is a damn good time and really makes you feel like a modern day Tarzan swinging on some vines in a concrete jungle. I'm sorry, did you think I was gonna say, it really makes you feel like Spider-Man? Come on, I'm not that much of a hack reviewer. Back on point, the web swinging makes the simple task of going from point A to point B a blast. rather than just quiet reflection time like in most sandbox games. If I had to gripe, it's that running up buildings should slow you down after a while, or at least require you to zip up to regain speed, because running up a 90-degree angle faster than running on the ground looks really fucking stupid, and is a newfound pet peeve of mine. Fighting mobs and web swinging make up like 85% of the game alone, and Spider-Man executes them fantastically. The rest of the gameplay is pretty lackluster though. The bosses should be one of the best aspects of the game, but aren't nearly as fun. They're overly simplistic and often don't have the same amount of freedom with the combat that just fighting basic grunts does. It boils down to web them, or wait for an opening, then go in and throw hands. Yep, that's pretty much it. In future games, Insomniac should really make more use of the gadgets that they offer. You can ignore them for most of your playthrough and just use the basic webs for the entire game. Feels kind of like a waste, but since the normal webs recharge really quickly, there's no point to use anything else, unless you really want to. The side content is also a mixed bag. There are some notable side missions like fighting Tombstone, but most are pretty mediocre and feel like sandbox filler. Like fucking hell, they seriously added medal challenges? Gotta love it when Spider-Man says he'll do better next time when he gets a bronze like he got a D on a spelling test. Also, having players take pictures of your in-game landmarks is possibly the biggest humble brag I've seen a game developer pull. Like, come on Insomniac, I expect a little more effort than just slapping in some Ubisoft sandbox elements.
Menu for my first real date with MJ. Wish I could have afforded someplace fancier.
To be fair, some of the other gameplay segments the main story forces on you are much worse. While stealth and sneaking up on enemies as Spider-Man is nothing to write home about, it's leagues better than the once-spotted instant fail missions you do as Mary Jane and Miles Morales. These slam the brakes on the pacing and really would have been a lot better if you've just seen them through a cutscene. Spider-Man also has to complete some puzzle mini-games such as that one from BioShock, but worse, and the oh so riveting Match the Lines. Woo. Okay, I've got one final nitpick. It's that the music feels sort of Marvel-y. It's a basic orchestral soundtrack except for that one opening song for whatever reason, which is kind of a letdown. The main web swinging theme is really good at first, but it gets really fucking old after the 5th time. Like, compare this OST to what Into the Spider-Verse did, and there's no contest. All the character from the licensed music in that movie puts the PS4 title to shame music-wise. Again, these last few complaints are pretty minor in the grand scheme of things, but they do damper the overall experience. For most of the game, however, you'll be taking on thugs, swinging around New York, and witnessing the height of superhero storytelling. With all that said, there's some definite room for improvement. Spider-Man for the PS4 gets a B. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for sticking around all the way through. As always, feel free to share your thoughts of the game and the video in the comments. Also, if you want to come up with a hashtag millennial superhero problems, feel free to do that, I guess. I don't know. Could be fun. But anyway, I've got a couple more videos in the works, so I hope to see you guys around for those. Anyway, later.